Happy Tuesday and welcome to Falcon Focus. It is episode number 24 and our 12th episode here in the second semester. My name is Matt Menzel. On this week's edition, in segment number 2, we talk men's volleyball as they begin their first round of the NAC men's volleyball tournament tonight at MSOE. We'll talk with their senior outside hitter, Josh Dinkelman. But first, we talk acrobatics and tumbling. They'll be home for a triangular coming up on Saturday here inside the John Book Fieldhouse at 12 noon. And senior Katie Mirasola kind enough to join us as we are socially distanced. Masks are on, and let's make sure we disinfect the spray and get that hand sanitizer going. Would you like some hand sanitizer?
Absolutely.
See, there we go. We're keeping it clean and safe. And here we go with episode number 24. But let's talk acrobatics and tumbling. And you came to Concordia with a cheerleading background, and I think that's what's kind of unique about the sport is when you look at some of the athletes' bios, a variety of backgrounds into this sport. So I guess, how did you get involved going from cheerleading to acrobatics and tumbling?
Yeah, so I did cheerleading ever since 6th grade, and I worked all the way up into my high school program. And honestly, after high school, I thought I would be done with cheerleading. You know, you kind of just feel a little bit burnt out, and you feel proud of what you've accomplished in high school, so you're ready to be done. But then I was kind of looking at other cheer programs in Wisconsin, and I kind of had my mind set on one. But then my twin brother, Nick, as we know, goes to Concordia, and he committed to play football here. And so my parents were like, Katie, you should really, check out this school. This would be amazing if both of you went. In a perfect world, of course. So I ended up touring here and decided that this is a school that I wanted to come to, and I really liked it. And I honestly did not even know about the acrobatics and tumbling program here just because it is so new. And at that time, it wasn't really promoted as much as it is today. But then I came here and I saw they had flyers for open tryouts. And I was like, oh my gosh, acrobatics and tumbling. Looked at their Instagram and I'm like, this is extremely cool and something that I could see myself doing with my cheer background. So then I emailed the assistant coach and she's like, yep, come on in and see what you got. And here we are today.
We'll talk about your twin brother too as we go along because full disclosure, I'm a twin as well, and I would I'd love to compare notes because there's some things that I need to know because apparently my twin knows when I'm hurt, I'm in pain, I feel absolutely nothing back her direction. So we'll have to compare some notes. But you talk about cheerleading, and okay, so you get involved in acrobatics and tumbling. Okay, now looking back 4 years, how or has your cheerleading background helped you in acrobatics and tumbling?
Yeah, definitely coming in, I think the main part that helped me was the same floors. So both cheerleading and acrobatics and tumbling uses a dead mat when gymnastics uses that spring floor. So I think tumbling was something that really helped me. And then the stunting aspect, I came in as a top, which is like the person at the top. But then through acrobatics and tumbling, my coaches kind of trained me and I learned how to be a top and a base.
So how long did it take, that transitional period to get a real feel for the sport?
Yeah, I think coming in, it was kind of interesting because we had a lot of upperclassmen, which is helpful because I was able to learn and kind of watch them and they would mentor. There were only 3 of us freshmen at the time. And so we really got to see like the strengths of what they could do and kind of figure out how to do it on our own as well.
Your first year competing for Concordia was 2018, and truth be told, I am a huge fan of acrobatics and tumbling, and the first opportunity I saw to see you guys compete was last year, and there's just an energy, there's a vibe, there's a positivity that, it's second to none, and talking with other athletes in the sport, they'll tell you, that first meet, it's unlike anything that you could prepare for or anything that you've ever been through before.
Yep.
What do you remember about your first meet back in 2018?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I believe it was an away meet. And
at Gannon.
Was at Gannon,
Yep.
which is crazy. And my parents were able to come, which I think kind of helped ease my nerves a little bit. But at the same time, like you had mentioned, I really had no idea how the meet would go. I had an idea just because we watched film and stuff of how a meet would run. But I really had no idea how I would feel, if I would be extremely nervous, if I would be calm. But then it ended up being kind of a mix, with acrobatics and tumbling. The warm-up time is extremely long. Like, you can warm up anything throughout the entire meet on the side. But for cheerleading, on the other hand, you only get 8 minutes before you compete. And that's, like, extremely nerve-wracking. Like, ready, 3, 2, 1, go. But then acro is, like, super lengthened, and the warm-up time is long, which I think really helps ease a lot of people's nerves, and they don't really realize that until they get to the meet day.
I think it's kind of unique because coming full circle, okay, so you began against Gannon, and Gannon will be one of the teams here to wrap up your time with the Falcons, at least this being your senior year. So now you're listed as a base. That's your quote-unquote position. Have you always been a base? What does that position entail?
Yeah, so like I said, in high school, I was a flyer, so I was the person on the top of the stunt. And then coming into acro, I was also a top, and I kind of learned how to do different things that acro involves, like pop to hands, a little bit of toss, of course stunting, which is what I knew could do. But then sophomore year, the coaches were like, hey, Katie, we really want you to try basing and midding. And honestly, thinking in my head, I'm like, I don't think I can lift someone above my head. But the coaches were super amazing and, like, willing to work with me, and, you know, they pushed me and they knew I could do it, which really helped. So now I'm the one who stands on the bridges and stands on the girls and holds people above my head, and I never thought that I'd be doing this, but it's amazing.
Well, you and I have talked about this in the past. Okay, so when you're holding another athlete, I mean, where's your focus? Because I got to believe, I mean, not only are you sitting there going, please don't drop, and I hope my arms don't just cave, but what is your focus during a meet? You obviously got fans looking right at you.
Yep.
I mean, you got to stay in the moment.
Yeah, so pretty much what I do is during practice, obviously you're looking across and there's no one staring at you. So then come meet time, it's almost like a shock. You're like, wow, there are people staring at me and I'm staring directly back at them. But what I do is I pretty much just, like, block that out, and I take a deep breath, and even if I'm making direct eye contact with someone, I just ignore that and just focus on what I'm doing in the stunt.
There are 6 events in a meet. What is your favorite event? What is the most challenging event?
Sure. I would say my favorite event has always been pyramid event.
Okay.
I've been a part of pyramid event ever since freshman year. So I think that's something that I've enjoyed doing and something that I look forward to competing every year. And I would say the most challenging event, and I think this is like across the board team event, just because it's the event that we put most of our time in. It's the event that our fans love to watch the most, and it's the event that, based on your score, for example with Adrian, it can determine who's going to win the meet.
East Texas Baptist was the opponent here back in 2020, right before COVID-19 shut everything down. Going back to 2020, not really, to dwell on the situation, but what do you remember about that day, being that it was the final event hosted by Concordia before everything was shut down? I think you guys knew going in that was going to be it. What were the emotions like that night? Ended up being a win, but I mean, no one back of your mind, that's it.
Yeah, even, like, thinking about that meet just, like, gives me, like, I don't know, like a weird feeling, because going into the meet, I think it was honestly 20 minutes before we had to start rolling out our mats, we found out that spring break was canceled. And then right before warm-ups, the word kind of got around that this was going to be our last meet of the season, and, everyone was kind of confused, but just going with it because that's what we had to do. And I think going into that meet, I remember the team feeling really like, let's do this for everyone. This is the last time we're competing of the 2020 season. There were some girls who knew that they weren't going to be able to come back. So I think it was a little emotional for them. But it also was emotional just because of the time and the uncertainty of events. And, of course, being that this was the last meet of the NCATA season and the last Falcon competition, I believe, as well.
No, it was. And now fast forward, okay, so a longer off season. You do have a 2021 season, but February 20th comes a calling, and you guys are expected to host Adrian here, and due to some unforeseen circumstances, that's wiped off the calendar. You guys end up having an opportunity, an exhibition to kind of show off what you guys are able to do and perform for the fans here inside the John Boog Fieldhouse. I guess without even talking about the fact that meet against Adrian was canceled, how exciting was it to be back on the mat and competing, even if it was against yourselves, so to speak, or at least showing off what you can do, just to be back out there performing for the fans here inside the John Book Fieldhouse?
Yeah, it was almost kind of emotional. I think that's when it hit me that, wow, I'm actually a senior and this is my last shot at doing that, especially because every meet, we didn't know if we were going to ever be able to compete again, especially with what had happened with the Adrian meet. So I think coming into the exhibition, we were all super pumped up, especially for the freshmen because it was their first meet as well. And they were a little bit nervous, but especially that we could have our fans come and like have video, pictures, the whole production really just was super exciting.
And what's crazy, and I don't think it's often talked about, is you hear, okay, this team's got COVID, that team's got COVID, this team's on pause, that team's on pause. What you don't hear often, spoken about is what emotional tolls that take on the team that's dealing with it. And look at acrobatics and tumbling. All of a sudden, okay, you get this exhibition on the 20th of February. News comes down thanks to COVID-19 protocol. You have 3 consecutive meets then postponed. So now you're sitting there going, when does the season actually, officially begin and competition? How do you guys go about keeping morale high? How do you stay upbeat knowing that who knows when you're actually going to get to go out there and actually compete?
Yeah, I think that was the biggest, challenge for us, especially this is new for not only us as athletes, but also new for our coaches. They kind of have to figure out what do we do to keep the team positive and to keep them excited about knowing that they will compete. And I think the biggest thing we did was we kind of took a step back and looked at the season as a whole. They reassured us that we will get to compete. And I don't know if you know, but we start practicing from September all the way through April. So, we're putting in so much work. And I think some of the girls struggle with, wow, I'm putting in all this work, but I've never even competed in an actual meet. Like, where is my motive? And at the beginning of this semester, everyone on a little sheet of paper wrote down their why they come to practice in the morning, why they're a part of this team. And so what we did is we pulled out those whys and reminded everyone that you decided to be on this team and everyone is super important part of this team and it's going to be worth it. We promise you, and we are going to compete. And you'll look back on this and you'll realize why you do what you do.
And again, what's crazy, and I know Sarah Koenig and I have sat here talking about it too, is you talk about a commitment and practice typically at 6 a.m. That's when it officially starts. But I mean, they're in the gym before 6 a.m. competing for 2.5, 3 hours. But you finally got the opportunity to compete in a meet that counted on March the 28th. So that day finally came. It was at Georgetown College. You guys got the win. What do you remember about that day? What was the difference? How were you guys able to pick up that W?
Yeah, I think going into it, it was like, wow, like we're finally actually getting to compete. And again, I think everyone was super excited, but at this meet, we weren't allowed to have fans like how at Concordia we can.
Sure.
So I think the balance of not having the fans, they really give us that extra like boost and like positive energy that we need. But like you mentioned, we found that within ourselves and our coaches are, they really help motivate us. And if one person is positive, that can create an amazing positive environment. And I think that really just helped us pull off the win.
And then it was a good Friday on April the 2nd, able to come through with a triangular victory and knocking off Adrian and Trine. What was the story of that day? How is that different being that you're not just facing one opponent, but now you have 2, and so the format, drags out a little bit longer?
Yeah, definitely. I think going into this meet, it was going to be the closest meet we were going to have. And of course, Adrian is like our biggest competitor because it's always head-to-head every single year. And also at this meet, we could have our families come, which is extremely, extremely amazing. So going into this meet, we had upped a lot of our starting values in our events. And most of our girls were healthy enough to be able to compete. So pretty much we came to Adrian and we threw out our best skills and it ended up, showing up. And I think it kind of threw Adrian for a loop, especially because they were up the entire meet up until tumbling event. So that was extremely exciting, and that win was definitely my most favorite win thus far.
Yeah, great stuff on Friday. And again, the Falcons will be inside the John Book Fieldhouse Trine, and Gannon will be here 12 noon. Come out and support Acrobatics and Tumbling. This is a very positive group, and that's one thing that, again, I mentioned it before, and the vibes are second to none, and you strike me as a very positive person. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think just growing up, like, always competing on a team aspect and pretty much competing with all females. I think genuinely our coaches are more positive, I should say, and I think I do thrive off of a more positive environment, and I like to show that to our underclassmen, and I hope that we can forever keep the same positive, energetic environment, because I really think it helps this program grow, and it shows other teams, like you mentioned, that we are like a positive group of girls and that we thrive off of that environment.
I'm going to cut into some of Josh Dinkelman's time, and that's all right, because we're going to talk about your twin brother for a minute. 'Cause I do want to talk about that aspect, because I think that's pretty unique, is the fact that you mentioned your brother is on the Concordia football team. They will be in action now, a home date against Ripon coming up on Saturday at 1 p.m., home against Eureka on the 17th at 2 p.m., and I read that, okay, you've been cheerleading for his football games going back to, his middle school days on into high school at Sussex Hamilton.
Yep.
But how close are you guys, and have you always been that close?
Yeah, I think growing up, we were always in each other's same classes, which is kind of crazy. Some parents decide to separate their twins, but our parents wanted us together. And I think growing up, we always had the same little friend group, and we just kind of created this really close twin bond. And people always ask me, are you really that close with Nick? And I am. Like, I was just talking with him on FaceTime this morning, and like, I don't know, Nick really is my best friend, and I hope that we can continue that same bond. And I think especially coming here to Concordia really allowed us to strengthen that. And especially seeing him play football, it kind of makes me emotional just thinking about that. This is my last meet this weekend, and then next weekend will be his last football game ever. So it's been a great ride here at Concordia.
Well, you mentioned before, the plan wasn't, at least initially, for you guys to go to the same college. So I guess what was the selling point for you?
I think the selling point was, in the back of my mind, I think I always had hoped that we would go to the same college, but realistically I was like, no, that won't happen. But really, the day that I toured here, Nick came with, already knowing that he committed here, and he was like, what do you think? And I'm like, you know what, like, this just feels right.
Well, and you mentioned a deep connection, and I got to ask you this, because I teased it a little bit, is my sister will call my parents and say, there's something wrong with Matt. I can just feel like he's not feeling well. He got hurt, and I got in a car accident one time. She knew it, but I'm hours away.
Wow.
Now, maybe I'm just not, in tune with my feelings, but I don't have that same, when something's happening to her, I have no clue. I just think it's indigestion or something. So my question for you is that a deep connection? Do you know, if something's wrong? Can you sense something, or is that just, is she making that up, or is there something to that?
Honestly, people ask me all the time, like, oh, twin telepathy, when he gets a paper cut, do you feel that on your finger? And honestly, no, but I think what I do feel is that when his feelings are off, or when I'm feeling down, maybe we don't talk to each other as much, or maybe we're kind of taking a step back. So when something is up with Nick, I'm always like, Mom, Dad, check in on him.
Sure.
I'm kind of going through something too, or I'm kind of busy, and, we figure it out together.
Now, does he do the same thing, or is that a guy thing? We just aren't in tune.
I honestly think you're right. It's more of the girl intuition.
Sure.
Because
there's probably a lot of truth to that.
Nick doesn't really ever go out of his way. I mean, he would, I'm sure, because he's a great brother. But you're right. I think it is more of the female intuition, oh my gosh, my brother.
So for you, what's the best part about being a twin? What's your least favorite part about being a twin?
Sure. I think my favorite part about being a twin is just having that built-in best friend, and knowing that I can always go to him, whenever I need to. He's my family, he'll do anything. I think my least favorite, now this is going to sound crazy, when I came into Concordia, Nick avoided me. Literally at all costs, because people would ask him, is this your girlfriend?
No kidding.
And I'm like, no, we're twins. We're not. Nope, that's not it.
I could see that. I would go my separate way too for a little while.
And that still happens, like when we're on vacations.
No
People will
kidding.
ask, and we're like, no, because we also don't really look alike. He has blue eyes, I have brown eyes. Growing up, his hair was a lot lighter than mine, so it's just kind of been a running joke.
No kidding. Let me wrap it up. We ask all seniors the same question, and at least according to your bio, your major is marketing. I assume that's still the case.
Business communication.
Business. You see,
Yep.
those are never updated.
I know.
I don't know why, but business communication. So let me ask you. Okay, so as you get ready to graduate, thinking about life after Concordia, what do you hope to do with that major?
Yeah, so I keep getting, my mom harping on me to apply for jobs, which I completely understand. But I really hope that I can do something in communications, digital media, marketing, anything in that sort of nature. I've looked into like sales as well. But my dream, like if I picture myself in 10 years, my dream would be to live in Arizona. It's
Okay.
always been my favorite vacation spot, and I also have family who lives there. So every time I go there, it's like my happy place. So
Any particular part of?
yeah, so I have family who live in Scottsdale.
Okay.
So I think that area, Scottsdale, Tempe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Katie, appreciate your time. All the best on Saturday as, again, Acrobatics and Tumbling compete Gannon and Trine in the house. 12 noon, the triangular gets underway inside the John Book Fieldhouse. When we come back here on Falcon Focus, we turn our attention to men's volleyball, talking with Josh Dinkelman. They have the NAC tournament tonight against MSOE.
Seems every college starts by asking the same question. What do you want to do for a living? You want to be a teacher, a businessman, a nurse? At Concordia University, we ask a slightly different question. What kind of person do you want to be? Because we believe success in life should be measured by how you live, not just what you do. Of course, that may not be the common way, but at Concordia, it's the only way. Concordia University. Live uncommon.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Falcon Focus. As again, we make sure now that Katie Marisola has left, we got again freshen up here and make sure the hand sanitizer. Would you like some hand sanitizer?
I'll take some hand sanitizer.
There you go. We have Josh Dinkelman now joining us on set. He is a senior outside hitter for the men's volleyball team, wrapping up their 4th season of existence. He's been a member since year number 1, and we'll talk about that as we continue. But again, masked up and socially distanced here on this week's edition. And an exciting time for men's volleyball because for the second time in 3 possible years, because COVID-19 canceling the duration of last season, but the Falcons are in the NAC tournament, and they will take on MSOE in Milwaukee tonight. That's a first-round matchup. Set 1 of the best of 5 will get underway at 7 p.m., and so Josh, let's start there. And I guess what excites you about round 2 against MSOE, a team that came here and knocked out the Falcons back on the 25th of February, but you guys were competitive, especially in that first set.
Yeah, it was a good matchup that day. Obviously, they're a great team, always being in the top in the conference every year. But we've been playing a lot better volleyball than we were at the beginning of the year, so we're just excited to see what the Falcons 2.0 for this year can do against the Raiders.
Yeah, and the winner of tonight's matchup will play Thursday at Dominican in a semifinal, most likely at 7 p.m. But let's go back to last Thursday. And the regular season was expected to conclude against Concordia Chicago, but due to unforeseen circumstances, that matchup was wiped off the calendar. And so what do? Well, how about a blue-white inter-squad scrimmage? And I'm telling you right now, it was an event. If you missed it, you missed out. It was a lot of fun, and it wasn't your typical blue-white inter-squad scrimmage. I mean, it was competitive, and it was at times there was some trash talking going on the court, but that was in lieu of, and it ended up being the senior night final opportunity for the first ever 4-year class to play here inside the John Book Fieldhouse. I guess when you look at that night, and we'll touch on some more of the details from that night, but how much fun was that for you?
Oh my gosh, it was a blast. I mean, being one of the 4-year seniors, it was great to kind of see where we started at 0-26 the first year, and then getting back to that kind of competition volleyball that we played here Thursday night was just incredible. It was so, I don't even know how to describe it. The lights came on and everyone was ready to compete. That's kind of what the people don't see in practice every day, that we're just nose to the gridiron. We're just going, grinding, and getting ready for our next competitions.
And it was competitive. It went all 5 sets. It lasted a good couple of hours. And the 2 setters were the team captains. They got to pick the teams the day before. There was a draft. There's a video of, if you missed the broadcast, check out the archive, because a draft complete with music, graphics. I know you were behind the scenes working on that, but it was Team Matthew Corman against Team Nathan Petrus. I guess when you look at, again, how that just came together, the drafting, how the teams came together, I mean, could you have ever envisioned that, okay, you hear, hey, we're not facing Concordia Chicago now, it's a blue-white matchup, that it could become what it became?
Yeah, I mean, we were all kind of bummed that we couldn't get our Concordia Chicago game. Obviously, the seniors are like, well, what does this mean for us? And our coach is like, don't worry, we have a backup plan. We're planning on a blue-white scrimmage if that doesn't work. And as soon as we got the call that it wasn't going to go, we were like, Coach, can we just have some fun with this? And we're like, we could do a draft, we could do all this sort of stuff, like change up the teams a little bit so it's not always like the first side against the second side like we do in practice. So he's like, if you guys want to draft, we'll do a draft. So we got to do some fun stuff like that and just have a good time as a team for the last big game for the seniors.
Essentially, the senior class, which includes grad student Matthew Corman, membership of 5 that were honored prior to the matchup on Thursday. You look at the ceremony, the celebration. I know at one point during the matchup there was a chant of Dinkelman, the fan section chanting your name. I mean, you brought it. I mean, you brought your A stuff that night. But on top of that, I also understand your high school coach was in attendance too. So I guess when you reflect back at just what that night meant to you, as you mentioned, you kind of reflect on all the time and effort you've put into the last 4 years trying to help build this program.
Yeah, it was super special. I mean, I came in out of senior year in high school, and coach was like, hey, we're starting up a team. You want to be a part of it? And I'm like, Coach, I'm not very good. He's like, doesn't matter. We're looking for bodies. We're looking for people that want to get better and want to grow, want to start a program. And I'm like, I'm in. And there were times along the way where I was like, do I do this? Can I not do this? Especially like halfway through college, I was really trying to reflect and be like, where am I in life? Where do I need to like be better? And volleyball was one of the places where I'm like, is this for me? Is it not? And the guys just pushed me and said, listen, you've been here for this long. Come on. You got the last 2. And that was just a big turning point for me, being like, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be. And my high school coach has led me through a bunch of different stuff like that. I would always call him or text him and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. I just need someone to tell me I can do it. And he was always there. So I just felt like it was a perfect time for him to come watch me play.
Well, let me ask you about that inaugural season. You mentioned it, did not win a single matchup, only won a couple of sets the entire year. I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, you knew if you were coming to a men's volleyball matchup that year, not to knock down the program, but you go through growing pains. There's no doubt about it. But you knew you're probably going to be out in an hour because it's part of the growing process. To the program's credit, though, you go from a tough inaugural season to now where this is a team that's going to give you their best. Not that they didn't give you their best back then, but they're giving you their best now, and it's not going to be over in 60 minutes. And if it is, it isn't without having to work for it. But I guess when you look back at that season, what do you remember, and how do you feel this program has grown in those 4 years?
I mean, like you said, it was a new program, and especially coming into the NAC where you have top 15 teams all the time. At least the top 4 in the conference are always in the top 15, if not the top 20. So it's a tough conference to get into, and we would always talk about, hey, it's going to be like this for the first year, and next year is going to be the year that we really grow, and it just taught us how to accept defeat and how to move past that defeat, use it, and get to the next game.
Well, as you said, it's not just a Concordia thing. Most teams in an inaugural season go through the same growing pains. Ask Wisconsin Lutheran men's volleyball about that this past spring. But you look in, I guess, as an athlete, as a person, and you kind of touched on a little bit in talking about, dealing with issues, calling your high school coach. How do you feel you've grown?
Oh my gosh, I've just been able to, I don't want to say accept defeat, but learn to use like the negatives that happen and use them as a platform to just spring load myself off of them. And I mean, you've been to our games. I've sat the bench for the last 4 years, and it's been a great time to like work on my leadership for the second side and work on my bench leadership and making the energy off the court so that the guys on the court can just play.
Well, I'm glad you said that because that was my next question. In case you saw my cheat sheet, was talking about how I do think you're the ultimate team player, whether you play or not. I mean, you're not one of those guys, and there are athletes out there. We all know it, whether it be college, pro, whatever, that will pout, that will sit over there, and you know they're not having a good time. They want to play. Not that you don't want to play, but you make the best of any situation. So I guess who do you credit that to? That you're that type of person? Where does that come from? That you're able to, maybe make a tougher situation into a positive. And you know what? If you're not on the court per se, you're doing the next best thing by supporting the team in any way you can.
Yeah, I mean, I really give credit to my parents. They really kind of hammered it into me when I was young that you're not going to be the star of the show always. Life isn't going to just put you up on a pedestal all the time. You have to learn that sometimes you're second or third in line. So you just have to accept where you are and work with what you got. So do the best with the situation that you're in.
So before we talk about the current situation, the current 5-7 2021 squad, you touched on it too a little bit, but I want to drag it out a little bit further. When you look at 4 years, and hopefully the best is yet to come, maybe a win tonight, maybe a win Thursday. We'll see how this tournament plays out. But what are your memories? When you look back at 4 years, are there certain matches, are there certain trips? What stands out to you about your time with men's volleyball?
Yeah, I mean, obviously year 2, the first win against North Park. That was a good one because, I mean, we had just gone 0-26, so it's like we got to win one of these eventually. So it was nice to get that first win started off really quick against North Park. They were a good squad, and it was a fun one. Obviously, the MSOE game, the big one where we knocked down a ranked opponent, that was insane. I mean, going back into the locker room, it was so loud in there. It was a great time, but just all of the times we got to bond as teams on a long bus ride or just hanging out, chatting in a locker room before or after a game and going over to friends' rooms like during the day and just hanging out, having people to talk to. It's been great.
You look right now, the team sits with 5 victories and 7 defeats. Easily could be 7-5. You could flip that around. How do you summarize this season? What do you feel are the strengths of this team going into tonight's first round NAC tournament matchup?
I mean, I know Thursday night on the broadcast, my coach described it as awesome, and that's how I would describe it too. It's been amazing to see, like, it's really been a roller coaster the last couple of years. Like, freshman year, it was kind of like, okay, we're 0-26, and then sophomore year, we built, did pretty well, and then junior year, we were going for a great season, and then COVID hit, and then we kind of plateaued out, but this year has been great, watching our guys bounce back, getting all the stuff that we have to do done, like mass. Obviously, everyone's going to tell you these aren't fun to play with, and I'll agree with that. But if that's what we got to do to play, that's what we got to do to play.
So you said that Coach called it awesome on the broadcast. Does that mean you went back and watched the archive?
Oh, of course I had to. I had to see what you and Coach were talking about me, talking about the guys.
Well, I appreciate the viewership.
The
we need all the viewers we can get. James Althoff is part of this team and has been now the last few seasons. When you look at what he brings, you've seen it, you've been on the court with him, you've been on the sideline with him, you've watched. What makes him so effective?
He's just so smart. I mean, he's been playing the game for, I think, 12 years. So he can literally look at something and say, all right, I'm going to hit it here. And he's trained his body to do that. He's trained his mind to know what he's doing. It's kind of cool to watch him play the game.
Another guy, Spencer Herman, a nice addition, opposite hitter. How has he changed how opponents maybe approach the Falcons, being that, maybe in the past you could try to focus in on try to limit James Althoff, but all of a sudden I'll pick your poison.
Yeah, obviously the last couple of years people would describe us as a one-trick pony. We had James, the heavy arm on the outside, and then we kind of had people to fill in. But now we got Spencer and James, and our middles are getting really involved, and it's kind of expanded what we have to work with, and it's kind of pulled other teams into, okay, we can clamp on this guy, but then that leaves him one-on-one, or we can go here and this is open, and it just gives us a lot of options to work with to pick teams apart.
Yeah, you have Andy Ellingham, Blake Swant back from his shoulder surgery, among some of the guys that have really stepped up. Who are some of the guys that maybe caught your eye outside of maybe some of the names that we've dropped that have been playing well here as you go into tournament play?
I mean, obviously another senior, Jeremy Tice. He's been doing really well. We kind of came in the same way. We were both like liberos freshman year, and we were like, Coach, we want to hit, we want to do this, and he has just been really working his tail off the last couple of years to get into that lineup, and he's been doing great things. Alex Holland on the second side. He started at the beginning of the year, and then when Blake got back from his shoulder and everything, he kind of moved back down to second side, but he can hit a ball. He is long, he is lanky, and he can put the ball to the floor. So I'm excited to see where he can go in the next couple of years.
So give me your scout report. Beat Curtis Matson for a minute, and MSOE, the opponent tonight, from what you know, from what you've seen from playing MSOE over the years, if the Falcons are to pull off the upset tonight, what needs to happen?
The Raiders are a really good team. They're really disciplined, so we just have to play as disciplined as we know how to play. Low press blocks, getting shoulder to shoulder, high hands, all that sort of stuff, taking the setter out if we don't have a point scoring swing. It's just a lot of the things that our coach has told us in the past for any game, really. It's just we got to get hot, we got to get touches.
And I'm hoping to send those negative vibes there about how about some more service errors. That was a big factor when the Falcons were able to pull off the upset against MSOE a couple of years back. Let's wrap it up by asking about your future now. Okay, you're a senior, and we talked with Katie Mirasola, same thing, where she talked about her major. I'm going to ask you too. I'm 0 for 1 so far, but I'm hoping your major is correct. It's listed as Sport and Entertainment Business.
Yeah.
First of all, I guess what experiences have you been able to gain from that major in your time here at Concordia? And then to wrap it all up, what do you hope to do ultimately with that major?
Yeah, so obviously sport and entertainment, and then I'm also in the MBA program for strategic marketing. So I'm kind of hoping to use what I've learned here in the athletic department, working here for 3 or 4 years, however long it's been. It's been a hot minute. I'm a senior. It's getting to be that point of the year, but I mean, using the experiences that I've done here to go into another athletic department, hopefully eventually, and just use what I've learned and kind of build on that.
Well, Josh, I appreciate the time. All the best tonight, and hopefully more volleyball Thursday and into the weekend, and all the best with everything.
Thank you, Matt.
That is Josh Dinkelman. We thank Katie Mirasola for her time. Sam Dunn behind the scenes. I'm Matt Mendel. Thank you for joining us. And again, as long as it's safe to do so, and as long as we keep the masks on or socially distanced, we'll join again next week for another edition of Falcon Focus here on CWFalcons.com.